This lesson will cover combining like terms. It will also include the distributive property. I guess first we need to know what like terms are. Like terms are terms that have the same variables raised to the same power. So let's look at some examples below. Negative 13m, we're paying attention to the variable. So the variable is m and it's raised to the first power. 2/5 m has a variable m raised to the first power. Negative m has the variable m raised to the first power. And 38m has m raised to the first power. It has to do with the variables, not the coefficient. So let's see if you can pick the like terms below. In this list, be sure you're looking at the variables and to what power they're raised. So let's start with 6x. Do you see any other x terms? Be careful. 5 and 2/10 x, and then 10x. And that's all of the x terms. Next, let's see the x squared terms. We have 5x squared, negative x squared, and 1/4 x squared. And that's all the x squared terms. Do you see any more terms that have the same variables raised to the same power? I see a couple more. There's a 7y, the y term, and then just the regular y term. The coefficient for that term is a 1. So that's all the like terms on this page. So once you know what like terms are and you can identify them, you can add or subtract the terms based on the coefficient. Now the coefficient is the number that's multiplied to the variable. Usually it's right in front. Let's look at this example. 4m minus 9 plus m. I encourage you to change all your subtractions to addition, but remember there are two changes to make. You change it to addition and change the sign of the following term. Now I'm looking for like terms. According to their variables, I have 4m and m. So what's the coefficient with the m? There's one there. It's a 1. Anytime you have a variable standing alone, there's really a 1 that's there in front of it. So now you can combine like terms. Pay attention to the sign in front of the term. So 4m, in front of that is no sign, so we understand that to be positive. In front of the 1m term, we see the positive. So same signs, add and keep it positive. So 5m. Now bring down the plus negative 9. You could also write that answer 5m minus 9, because plus and negative is the same thing as minusing a positive. So those terms are identical. Negative 9 had no other constants to combine with. So that's as low as I can go. This is called a simplified answer. I can go no further because what's left, the 9 doesn't have an m. They're not like terms. So I'm through at this point. Here's another example. Negative 18 plus d minus 4y plus 2d. I like to change all my subtractions to adding the opposite. Now I'm searching for like terms. I notice my variables and I see two that are the same. So to look at what that d is, his number in front, his coefficient wasn't listed, so I knew it was a 1. And now he is like terms with the 2d. Pay attention to the sign. The sign is always in front of the term. I have a positive 1d plus a positive 2d. So same signs, add and keep. 3d. Now I'm looking at the negative 18. It's a constant. There are no other constants in the problem, and there are no other y terms to join with the negative 4y. So I just keep those signs in front of them and separate all the terms by addition. So I have 3d plus negative 18 plus negative 4y as an answer. I'm done because there are no other like terms left to combine. Okay, this one has some rational coefficients. I have 25/100ths y minus 9y squared plus 2 minus 5y minus 1. I'm again going to change all my subtracts to adding the opposite. And once I do that, I'm starting to see some like terms. So 25/100ths y can combine with, toward the end, do you see the negative 5y? So I have 25/100ths y plus negative 5y. I also have constants that can go together. So I have a positive 2 and plus a negative 1. So now when I combine, the negative 9y squared had no like terms, so it just comes down as part of the answer. And you'll notice if I have a big polynomial, I'm just going to mark through the terms that I've used so I'll know not to leave any. So negative 9y squared comes down as my answer. Now I'm going to add my constants. Positive 2 plus negative 1, different sign subtract, and you take the sign of the larger number, which is the positive 2. So now I can mark out my constants, and I have my y's to consider. I have 25/100ths to combine with negative 5. Different signs subtract. I'm going to take that off to the side to subtract. Line up your decimals, and if you borrow and subtract, 10 minus 5 is 5, 9 minus 2 is 7, bring your decimal down, and 4. 4 and 75/100ths, and remember that goes with your y term. I separate everything with an addition. He's a negative 4 and 75/100ths y because the answer takes the sign of the larger number, and between 25/100ths and negative 5 has the largest absolute value, so I take its sign. Now at this point, I have no more like terms that I can combine, so I'm finished. Okay, here's an example with the distributive property. The distributive property, you're going to see a number multiplied to a quantity. So if I look there, I have the y minus 9 in parentheses and 3 on the outside. Now understand, y and 9 are not like terms. So I can go back outside the parentheses and distribute 3 to the y and then 3 to the 9 through multiplication. It's 3 times the quantity, so I can multiply 3 times the individual components in the quantity. Okay, watch your sign. I have a subtraction. We're going to change that to plus and negative. And also, when you distribute the 3 through, realize the number that's with the y if you don't see it. So I bring my 2 down, and I realize there's a 1 with that y. So when I multiply 3 times 1y is 3y. 3, now separate all your terms by addition. Then 3 times negative 9 is negative 27. And bring down your added 2y. At this point, I'm seeing if I have any like terms, and I have, so be careful here. I have some constants and some y's. So I'm going to circle my y's, and I'll put boxes around my constants. So 3y plus 2y is 5y, and 2 plus negative 27 is negative 25. Separate your terms with addition. I have no more like terms, so I'm finished with this problem. Okay, these are ones you need to be careful with. You have 2 minus 8 times the quantity x minus 9. If I'm going to subtract, I'm going to change those to adding the opposite. So I'm changing both subtraction signs to adding the opposite. And I'm going to distribute through with the negative 8. So the 2 is going to come down. And then negative 8 times, do you remember what's with the x? There should be a 1 there. So negative 8 times 1 is negative 8x. Bring down an addition sign. Separate the terms with addition. And then negative 8 times negative 9 is a positive 72. I have like terms, my constants. So 2 plus 72 gives me 74 plus negative 8x. Guys, please be sure you pay attention to your signs. If they're supposed to come down to the next row, be sure you don't leave them out. As far as I can go is 74 plus negative 8x. Here's another example. I have 5 minus the quantity p plus 1. I'm going to change it to adding the opposite, but there's no number there. So if you don't see a number in front of those parentheses, there's another 1 that you can add. So you're going to be distributing through by a negative 1. Just don't lose the sign that's with that negative 1. That's what you'll distribute through. Now the number that's with a p is a 1, so we'll bring our 5 down. Negative 1 times 1p is negative 1p, plus negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Like terms will be my constants, 5 plus negative 1. So 5 plus negative 1 gives me 4, and then you bring down the plus negative 1p beside it. It didn't have any like terms to combine with. Okay, I've got 2 left, and I want you to pause it, and I want you to try these on your own, and then when you're ready, you can continue to see if you got the right answer. In the first problem, I'm going to change all the subtractions to adding the opposite, and then I'm going to combine like terms. So I'm looking for like terms. I have a negative 1n and a positive 4n. That's going to give me 3n. Now I have an m term and a constant, and they won't combine with anything. So I bring the 2m down. Remember, separate your terms by addition. And then my constant adding a negative 6. That's as far as you can go with this problem. No like terms left. Now with number 2, it's one of those you have to be careful with because they're subtracting a quantity. So I'm going to change my subtractions to adding the opposite, and I'm going ahead and insert my 1 there. If there's not a number, insert a 1. If there is a number, there's no need to. Just watch your signs. And I'm changing the subtraction on the inside. Now I'm going to distribute through with negative 1. So I'll bring my 3 down. Always separate your terms with addition. Negative 1 times a positive x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. Bring down your plus 1 in the back. Now look for like terms. I actually have 3 constants I can combine. 3 plus 2 plus 1 should be 6. The x term has nothing to combine with, so bring down plus negative 1x. Okay guys, the things I would tell you are watch your signs. If you are subtracting a quantity or subtracting anything, change your subtraction to addition and change the sign of the following number. When you circle your like terms, be sure you include the operation and the sign in front of it. Just be careful. Make sure you combine like terms, add when necessary, subtract when necessary, and if they're not like terms, don't add them. Their variables have to match exactly. Good luck.